I shared a story in Instagram and probably Facebook and LinkedIn where I share most of the content kind of goes into different places. It was a picture of me in front of a cherry blossom tree in the DC area. And I shared a little bit about the story behind the tree, the story behind the picture, and how it ties to what I call the growth path. And I wanted to share a little bit more of that story here because I think a lot of us can relate to different areas of our life where we start to notice something, then we think we missed out on something, and our brain is kind of wrestling between the things we don't have and we don't get, but the things that are actually already surfacing. It gets a little tricky trying to explain this because I feel like I can get into some really broad concepts. So let me go back into the story. I was sitting on the porch over the weekend, just scrolling through some photos and having a conversation with a friend via text. And we had talked the day before about seeing cherry blossom trees in the DC area, specifically around the Tidal Basin. I didn't know what the Tidal Basin was. I've gone to DC now twice. We moved to Maryland from Texas in July last year. And we went down one time for a few hours with my kiddos. Did we park? I can't remember if I even parked. I think we just drove around and saw a couple of different things. And then we went to National Harbor instead. It was busy around the holidays. We weren't sure where we were going. We didn't know what all to see. And I hadn't scoped out that area yet. So my brain was full of all the what ifs and what about this? And is there this? And I don't even know where to park and all the things. So that was our initial introduction to the DC area. And of course, lots of traffic, et cetera. And then I went again with one of my other children and my granddaughter 2 weekends ago. And we did park this time. We found a parking spot and we saw a lot of things. First, we stopped by the Capitol, walked about half a mile to the Capitol. It was super windy, super cold. I mean, I'm not talking about below freezing temps type of cold, but when you're out in a sunny day and it's starting to be spring weather, and then all of a sudden you're hit with a day that's somewhere in the low 30s, or I think of the 30s, but maybe went down to the 20s in the wind chill, and the wind was intense. When the wind died down, we were fine, but it was the wind that really exhausted us, and it felt colder than we were anticipating. And my son was visiting from Texas and not exactly prepared for this type of weather. But we saw lots of things. We saw the Capitol. I saw some beautiful trees in front of the Capitol, took a picture of it. And then we drove around over to the Lincoln Memorial and parked between the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument, and then walked over to where the reflection pond is. So they kind of line up one after each other. It was drained. So we saw a little fountain area before the Washington Monument, walked the drained reflection pond, walked up to Lincoln Memorial, still facing all the wind, taking in a lot of sights, experiencing a lot of sensations around us. The wind, the cold, the noise, the smells. Like the drain was not smelling so good underneath the reflection pond. I would have rather walked around it and seen the pond. But all these things were kind of coming in, right? And so there's a lot that's kind of activating the senses and a lot of things that we're noticing or not noticing. Like our brain can only take in so much information. And so we notice certain things, right? We're having all of these experiences, and then we drive around to go over to the Smithsonian Museum. So when you walk around this, you kind of drive this direction to go to the Smithsonian Museum. Had we gone this direction at all, like a couple of blocks, we would have reached that tidal basin, which had the cherry trees that my friend was talking about. And the first thing I could think of was how much I'd heard about the cherry blossom trees in the DC area, how we were told when we moved there, you got to see them. We were just missing it when my husband started visiting the area before we moved, trying to figure out where we were going to go. I think he saw some of it. I didn't. And I really wanted that experience of seeing those cherry blossom trees, what everybody talks about, but I didn't know what all they meant. Are they everywhere? I had this feeling there might be a row of them somewhere. And I'm still learning. I may not even understand it correctly today. So if you know more, feel free to share the comments so that I know for next time you can tell me. But when my friend said the tidal basin area, I researched it. I had to look it up. Okay, what is a tidal basin? And I saw this pond, and it's by the Jefferson Memorial. We saw the Washington and the Lincoln, but not the Jefferson Memorial. And apparently there's trees, but really it looks like, at least on the map, that where we were, it was just a little on the other side. We just didn't see it. There were, like some of the level of the land, the trees that were in the way. I didn't think I saw any of it. And so my immediate thought was, I missed out on all the cherry blossom trees. I missed out on so much of what I wanted to see. I can't believe I was so close and I missed it. Which reminded me of like a childhood event where I was at this hotel and I realized later that I never went a different direction and saw a certain part, and it stuck with me for years. I would actually had dreams about not going to that certain part. Eventually I went with my husband, and all it was like a minor little hallway with a couple of it was lame. But the fact that I didn't go stuck with me. And the fact that sometimes in all of our lives, if we struggle with perfectionism, overthinking, and trying to get all the things right, and as believers, trying to get Christianity right, our brain starts to build these patterns continuously of what did I do wrong? What did I miss? I didn't get something out of it. And this happens in the growth journey as well, in the growth and healing journey. Sometimes we start getting like on ourselves, like on our own case in our mind, that we didn't do something that we should have done that would have been a better thing to do. And this is the best way to live as a Christian. So, the Christian journey, though, of emotional health and spiritual growth is not about getting it all right. Trying to get it all right is what wears us out and keeps us disconnected from ourselves, from others, and from God. Getting it all right is not the answer. So I try to remind people in the Cultivate Together community, especially, this is not this whole growth journey and your growth process that you're on, or healing from different life events and maybe intense stressors or toxic environments that you've been in. The growth journey is not about getting like actively pursuing healing for every little thing in the past that caused problems, or about pursuing every specific thing that God has for us and making sure that we achieve it, or that we learn that this is a more healthy way of something, and so now we have to do it. It's not about adding expectation and burden. It's about going through a growth path that helps us draw closer to the God who created us, that helps us draw closer to his design within us so that we can experience more of the world around us. So I'm going to tie the story in with the growth path in just a second, but just to highlight what the growth path is, and this is something, a concept I'll develop more fully in the Cultivate Together community, and I bring it up occasionally in some of my videos. But first is awareness. Second is acknowledgement. Third is attending. Fourth is activation, and 5 is assimilation. These are phases of a growth process. We are always in some element of that phase in our lives if we're moving in a growth direction. It might be multiple levels in multiple areas of our lives if we're growth minded and moving in a growth direction. So that first step, awareness, that's when we start to have some level of awareness. It may not even be something that we can verbalize yet, because there's levels of like our conscious awareness that where you have that sense, I know this information, I know the name of that person, but it's not at the tip of my tongue. There's an awareness there that the knowledge is there. There's an awareness of some kind, right? So we may not be able to quite do anything with it. So let me go to the scenario at DC, or rather when I looked at the picture and had this conversation with my friend. First came the conversation, and my immediate thoughts went to, oh no, I missed it. I can't believe I was there only a few days from peak season of the cherry blossoms this year, and I didn't see what other people had told me I need to see. This thing that I had imagined in my mind that would be so beautiful, I missed all of it. And immediately kind of going to this all bad thought process, I started feeling kind of this weight. Oh, now maybe I have to plan another trip, or am I just going to miss it? And it starts going in kind of a negative spiral, right? Then I notice that I'm going in this negative spiral. So that's another level of awareness. And then I realized, I looked at this picture, I was scrolling through those pictures, and I found this picture of me in front of a cherry blossom tree, or at least I think it is. And I was looking at it going, is that a cherry blossom tree? And my friend said it was, and I was like, oh my gosh, I did see the cherry blossom trees. Not it wasn't in the way I envisioned it. It wasn't the idealized version of it or all I hoped for. All of my expectations were not met in seeing the cherry blossom trees, but I did see some of them and I took a picture in front of it. And what I was noticing at the time was how cold I was. I was feeling exhausted. I was noticing I can't figure out where my car is. I'm trying to look at the pin on my map. Am I going in the right direction? So at the time, I was noticing different things. I wasn't really fully present and aware of the tree that was right there, that was part of what I wanted to notice, what I wanted to see. So there's a lot of different noticing happening, right? Different things that I'm aware of then, that I'm aware of now. And that's just part of how life is. Sometimes we have different things coming into our awareness that we're not ready to deal with, and that's fine. We need to set them aside. I actually help clients do a mental exercise that helps some things that are coming into our awareness, like a memory of the past that was really painful, or multiple memories, and we can only deal with so much at a time. I have them mentally kind of set them aside. We do some exercises for that. Sometimes we are only able to notice what is in our immediate circumstance because it's already plenty of information. And that's okay. I mean, it was cold and we did see a lot of sights. And there was time with the family and seeing my granddaughter and watching my son hold her. And those were all really good experiences. So when I notice my negative thoughts going in a downward spiral, I'm bringing to mind, I'm going from awareness to another step in the growth path by bringing to awareness, oh, yes, there were all these good things that I got to see and do and experience while I was there. Those are good. And I want to bring my focus there. So now in the kind of the growth path, I'm moving from just awareness by remembering that I was in this environment to acknowledging that giving that value, acknowledging that that's a reality. Yes, I missed out on seeing what I wanted to see. Yes, I could go back if I wanted to. And also acknowledging I did see a lot. And that is probably enough for me this year. And acknowledging just the good feelings that I had and the memories that we already created. So I'm going from awareness into acknowledging more details about it, acknowledging the truth of the reality of what is I'm faced, like what that situation is and what are my options for the future. And then I move into attending to it. So attending might be like I am noticing that my thought pattern is going in a negative direction. I want to focus on more of these positive thoughts, and I'm struggling with that tension between the two. So I'm going to tend to it by taking it a step further. What is, maybe there's just a little bit of a grief for me that I need to let go of a perspective that I'm not like that was idealized, and so I'm kind of grieving by allowing the loss of what didn't fit into that picture kind of fall away, if that makes sense. That's what I mean when I say let go of, like it's allowing my brain to accept and agree with a different version of seeing the cherry blossom trees. And so I know this kind of imagery is, it's not necessarily maybe specific to what you might experience, but I hope that as you hear this and as you hear the process of moving into a growth path and noticing that it's relatable to you in some way. And I would love to hear what's coming to your mind. What are you noticing? Put that in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. As I say something, it could trigger some memories that you've had or patterns in your own life of thought processes. So feel free to, share a little bit below. Just keep in mind this is a public place, so it's not something where we get deeply personal, but just knowing that you can relate, or even, hands up and just kind of identifying something in the comments. That's helpful too. So that growth path, so that there's an intentional choice, and first there's the awareness and then there's moving into an intentional choice. Am I going to not stay aware of this? Am I going to kind of take this out of my awareness, or am I going to lean into it because there's something that I want to that I want to experience, a new growth element that I want to experience? So there are going to be times when something comes to our awareness, like I said, that we're not ready to deal with, or that is too much for us to deal with at the moment. We got to tweak it down into something smaller that we're able to focus on. Or we may not notice things just because we're not able to be present and notice what's happening. So that can be kind of the patterns in our life. Sometimes we're so engaged in all the things that we have to do that we're not noticing the guilt and shame coming up when we don't do it or we don't get it just right. And so I may choose to let my awareness focus on this is a pattern that's becoming problematic for me that I want to deal with. Hope that makes sense. So all that to say, I look back now on the cherry blossom trees. I have some sadness for that I didn't see what I wanted to see. I would like to see it. It is something I would want to do, but I don't want to drive an hour. I don't want to be in the traffic. I didn't want to spend my Sunday doing it. So I made a decision that I'm choosing to be okay with. And overall, I'm realizing while I noticed a lot, I could get on myself for not noticing the trees that were right there and not even looking a little further that I could have seen more. And I'm choosing to recognize I already took in a lot. There was only so much that one can notice at a time. And that is part of this message that I said before, that we're not out to fix and get it all right. The growth journey that I talk about is about allowing a process that happens between us and God that helps us experience more of Him, more of the world around us, and more of who we are as God designed us. And then only that can happen a little at a time. I'm reminded of when God, sorry, I'm about to sneeze, when God spoke to the Israelites about coming into the promised land and, excuse me, and He told them that He would give them the territory little by little. They took in a little more and a little more. Over time, He brought them into the fullness of the promised land. That is part of that growth journey. One piece, one element at a time. We notice what we notice, set aside some things that we intentionally can choose to set aside some things that are too much for us to attend to today or in a season, and allowing God to just reveal and to work in our hearts in the areas that He's already bringing us through. And we can notice those and move into a growth path that helps us experience more freedom. I hope this message has been helpful for you, and I'd love to hear if you have a similar story or just something that's resonating that you could share with others in the comments. It's helpful for them too. And if you found this video helpful, please do hit the like button on the video, and make sure that you're subscribed if you'd like to see these videos in the future. And the best way to do that is to also add the notification bell so that you get notified if you're on YouTube, that is, if you get notes so that you get notified when there's a new video. All right, friends, we'll talk to you soon. Take care.